Hello, everyone, and welcome to City of God, Book 5, and also Happy Easter. I'm hoping to make a little bit of an Easter connection towards the end of this video. I mean, obviously, the whole Christian life ties into it, so it shouldn't be that difficult, but I want to keep moving along. We've talked about Book 1, and now we're moving into Book 2. Now, Book 1 is really rich because it's a general overview. Book 2, and as I've found with Book 3, aren't quite as profound. I've found Augustine's building a really slow argument, really important argument, but a slow argument nonetheless. And so what he's done in a lot of book 2, up to the point where we're going to talk about, is he's ranting against the pagan value structure, a lot having to do with the theater. Now, that's uncomfortable for me as somebody who did a lot of theater in my life, and somebody who likes the theater, although Augustine makes me reconsider it and makes me have a little bit more of an ambivalent relationship, but that's beside the point. Basically, his essential argument is the theaters portray obscenities. The shows are horrible. They arouse lust and terrible, violent passions. And the gods seem to sanction the theater. The theater is an act of worship for people. Therefore, either the gods are not moral or they're not real, right? Because anybody who says the gods are moral, but then says the theater represents that, well, is clearly contradicting themselves. So Augustine is saying these pagan value structures, these gods, once again, they're not working out for us. We've talked about idolatry in the past. I don't want to keep going on about that point. But he also jumps out of this to say the real problem with the theater is not the inconsistencies with the pagan gods. The real problem is an issue he sums up on page 66. And here on page 66, what he says is, though corrupt thoughts, corrupt lives, and corrupt conduct are so dangerous that their most learned men assert that countries come to ruin through them, even when the cities still sin, nevertheless, their gods were not in the least concerned to protect their worshippers from such disasters. In fact, as we've argued, they were most concerned to promote this corruption. So we've got a double thing going on here, which is that these shows the common values and entertainment of the Roman Empire were wrapped around things that caused corrupt thoughts, corrupt lives, and corrupt conduct. And that's what brings countries to ruin, according to Augustine. There's a beneficial side to that for us, which is saying that maybe in the face of something like a coronavirus pandemic or any struggles, we think about the struggles in the 20th century, maybe what gets you through is not some sort of material prosperity, some act of fortune. Maybe there's something about us internally, our character, and our character as a community that can help us fight through, to help us survive terrible events, so that something like the sack of Rome wouldn't collapse Rome. Maybe it could have withstood it if it had the right character. But I don't know if that's where we're at as a nation. It's certainly not where Rome was at. I want to read at length, and this will be most of the rest of the video, this passage from Augustine, because I think it has broad applicability to where we're at here. So bear with me. It says, but the worshippers and lovers of those gods, whom they delighted to imitate in their criminal wickedness, are unconcerned about the utter corruption of their country. So long as it lasts, they say, so long as it enjoys material prosperity and the glory of victorious war, or better, the security of peace, why should we worry? What concerns us is that we should get richer all the time, to have enough for extravagant spending every day, enough to keep our inferiors in their place. It is all right if the poor serve the rich, so as to get enough to eat and to enjoy a lazy life under their patronage, while the rich make use of the poor to ensure a crowd of hangers-on to minister to their pride. If the people who applaud those who supply them with pleasures rather than those who offer salutary advice, if no one imposes disagreeable duties or forbids perverted delights, if kings are interested not in the mortality but the docility of their subjects, if provinces are under rulers who are regarded not as directors of conduct but as controllers of material things and providers of material satisfactions, and are treated with servile fear instead of sincere respect, the laws should punish offenses against another's property, not offenses against a man's own personal character. No one should be brought to trial except for an offense or threat of offense against another's property, house, or person. But anyone should be free to do as he likes about his own or with others, if they consent. There should be a plentiful supply of public prostitutes for the benefit of all those who prefer them, and especially for those who cannot keep private mistresses. It is a good thing to have imposing houses luxuriously furnished, where lavish banquets can be held, where people can, if they like, spend night and day in debauchery, and eat and drink till they are sick, to have the din of dancing everywhere, and theaters full of fevered shouts of degenerate pleasure, and of every kind of cruel and degraded indulgence. Anyone who disapproves of this kind of happiness should rank as a public enemy. Anyone who attempts to change it or get rid of it should be hustled out of hearing by the freedom-loving majority. He should be kicked out and removed from the land of the living. We should reckon the true gods to be those who see that the people get this happiness and then preserve it for them. Augustine's clearly painting a pretty grim picture there. And I don't think it takes too much of a stretch, especially for those of us who are trying to live according to scriptural principles, to say that our contemporary world looks a lot like Augustine's Rome. Maybe that's the fate of all great world empires. But I think it's appropriate in the time of the Easter season, the crucifixion and the resurrection, to think about what Christ and Christians have done for 2,000 years, which is rejecting the value structures of their immediate circumstances for the sake of a greater kingdom. We don't want to be the people worshiping whatever gives us the kind of pleasure Augustine was just talking about, the kind of happiness that Augustine was talking about. But you notice in there he said that those who reject this value structure, this principle of happiness, are ranked as public enemy number one. They're cast out or they're killed. So I think the question partially is, first of all, are we doing that? If we're not, maybe we should be doing that. Thinking about, in what ways do we buy into these value structures? What ways do we need to strongly rebel against them? And if we are doing that, we need to be prepared to accept the consequences. Now, of course, on the other side of that, there's resurrection. And I think a lot of times when we think about Easter, we focus on the resurrection of Christ, and we're celebrating that and recognizing his sacrifice and then how he defeated death, right? But we don't think about how that immediately applies to us and the kind of boldness that should give us as Christians, that no matter what's going on in the city of man, we have this promise of resurrection, and that the city of God is ultimately a city of resurrection. And I mean that in a very material sense. So whether on the one side it's the sort of undue suffering narrative that we experience when we're thinking of the crucifixion, that Christians are called to sometimes just suffer, like Christ did, or whether it's the idea that we have to be provocative and anti the current value structures of the world we're in, we need to focus that at the end of all of that, there is this beautiful hope of resurrection. I hope Augustine's words there were beneficial for you all. Once again, happy Easter, and thank you for watching these.